Welcome to Section 3 of the training. In this section, we'll be discussing how to determine correct correspondence for a signal. Every signal, whether it's a buy or a sell signal, has a certain precise correspondence that exists between the %D slow indicator to price and a corresponding relationship that exists between price and the MACD. So it's very important that we identify this precise relationship of the DS and price and the MACD. And the following section will show you exactly how to do that. Every signal, whether it's a buy or a sell, has exactly 6 corresponding points or locations that must be identified in order to determine if you have a correct signal. If these 6 points are not identified for every signal, then you might miss signals that you should take, and you might take signals that are incorrect to take. There are 2-point locations in the DS, 2 points in price, and 2 points on the MACD that we must find. Now let's go to a chart example and see exactly how we determine the correct correspondence for a sell signal. Here's a chart of the S&P showing a sell signal, identified by the yellow circle. We'll spend a good deal of time discussing exactly what it takes to have a sell signal in a future training section. But right now, let's focus on the candles in this yellow circle and see if we can identify the first DS high that started the formation of this sell signal. We'll begin our correspondence identification process by placing our vertical crosshair tool at the highest peak of the DS. Notice that with our crosshair placed here, we cannot get to a higher point on the DS by going forward or backward. Now notice that the vertical crosshair, when placed at the highest DS peak, splits a candle right down the middle. This candle that gets split in half is what we call our zero candle. We need to identify it with a number, so we simply call it 0. Now we can focus on that 0 candle and the 4 candles that occurred prior to it, to the left, for our corresponding candle to the DS high. Never look forward of the 0 candle. Any candle forward of the 0 candle is considered to be noise, and we ignore it. Now we take this 5-candle group, the 0, the 1, 2, 3, and number 4 candles, and we simply look to see which candle reached the highest price. Well, that's an easy exercise because it's rather plain to see that of these 5 candles, the tall blue candle traded the highest in price. This candle, our number 2 candle, is our corresponding candle to the DS high that we've already identified. Now we take our newly found corresponding candle and we find our corresponding high on the MACD to price. By placing our vertical crosshair on our corresponding candle, we can look straight down to see where the crosshair intersects the MACD line, the white indicator at the bottom of our chart. Now our task is simple. We must find the nearest highest MAC high to our corresponding candle. But there is a restriction, however. We must find the nearest highest MAC high without looking forward or backward more than 3 minutes of our crosshair line. Usually, as in this example, we're already right on our corresponding MACD high, or maybe a minute forward or backward will get us there. Once in a while, we may have to look 2 minutes forward or backward, and, less often, we may have to go backward or forward the full allowable 3 minutes to get to our nearest highest MAC high. but never go more than 3 minutes in either direction. Here, going forward or backward any amount will not get us to a higher point of the MACD, so we've identified our corresponding MACD to price. In fact, we've already found 3 of the corresponding points for this signal, so let's go find the remaining 3-point locations. Now we place our vertical crosshair tool at the peak of the next consecutive DS high, and that will identify our 0 candle, the one we see being split in half by the crosshair. It's a doji candle at about 1335 on our timeline. Now, by checking our number 1, 2, 3, and 4 candles that formed prior to our 0 candle, we can identify our corresponding candle. It's the number 3 candle, the one with the wick sticking up at 1332. It's the highest candle of this 5-candle group, including our 0 candle. With 5 points of this signal identified, all we lack is finding the corresponding MACD to price. Just as before, we put our vertical crosshair on our new corresponding candle, and we see that this time it doesn't intersect the MACD at a peak. In fact, it's in a little low of the MACD. So now we can choose to go forward or backward. Going forward or backward 1 minute will each get us to a MACD high. But we will want to go forward 1 minute because our job, remember, is to get to the nearest highest MAC high. We've stayed in the 3-minute forward and backward allowable range and have now found all 6 corresponding points for this signal. By identifying all 6 of the corresponding points for this signal, we've given ourselves a 100% mechanical means of determining with certainty that we do have a cell signal here. Otherwise, if we simply guessed at what corresponds to what, we would be incorrect on some signals. One of the valuable things about this method is that we have the ability to get a signal definition and a precise means of applying that definition to the signal. Now let's review cell signal correspondence. We always start by finding the DS high. Find the exact minute where the DS made its highest point. The point where the DS was highest corresponds to our 0 candle. By looking at the 0 candle and up to 4 candles preceding it, we find that the candle that reached the highest price, including the wick, is our corresponding candle. Once we've located our corresponding candle, we can look straight down from it to the MACD and find the corresponding high on or up to 3 minutes to either side of our corresponding candle. Now let's study a buy signal and its correspondence and how to determine the 6 corresponding points for a buy signal. Here's a chart. Our buy signal is here within the yellow circle. If you've studied the manual, you may recognize the features of the buy signal here. But don't worry if that part is not clear to you yet. We'll spend a good deal of time going over buy and sell signal definitions and structure a little later in our training lessons. For now, we just want you to understand the procedure for determining the correct correspondence that exists between the DS, price, and the MACD. That's always the order we look for. Always start with the DS, then look to price, then the MACD. That way, you will always identify the correct 6 points. Let's start, as we did with our earlier cell signal, by using the vertical crosshair tool. Only this time, we look for lows. lows on the DS, lows in price, and lows on the MACD. Lows form buy signals, and highs form sell signals. So here, we place our vertical crosshair at the lowest point of the DS for the first DS low of the signal. Well, that identifies our zero candle, the one we see here being split by the crosshair. And just as before, we identify the 5-candle group, the 0 and the 4 candles that formed prior to it to the left. Here we see the number 2 candle reach the lowest price with that tail sticking down. So the number 2 candle is our corresponding candle to the DS. Placing our vertical crosshair now on our corresponding candle, we identify the corresponding MAC low at 1415 on the timeline. Going over to the next consecutive DS low, we place our crosshair right on it, and we see our zero candle being split in half. 3 candles back of our zero candle, we get our corresponding candle to the DS. Now, looking straight down from our corresponding candle, we can easily identify our corresponding MAC low, indicated by the white arrow. Sometimes we have more than one candle that reaches the same low, or high for a sell signal. When this happens, we simply identify the candle that lines up the closest to your corresponding MAC low or high. There will always be one candle that is closer than any of the others that happen to reach the same low as your corresponding candle. Well, now that we've found all 6 points for this signal, let's review the definition of bi-signal correspondence. We always start by finding the DS lows. Find the exact minute that the DS made its lowest point. The point where the DS was lowest will correspond to our zero candle. And by looking at the zero candle and up to 4 candles preceding it, we can find the candle that reached the lowest in price, including the tail. The lowest price candle is our corresponding candle. And once we've located our corresponding candle, we can look straight down from it to the MACD and find the corresponding low on the MAC up to 3 minutes to either side of our corresponding candle. This concludes Section 3 of our training. If any part of this section was not totally clear, then we suggest that you review this section again. If any questions still remain, please write them down and we'll go over those questions in the online portion of your training. And if you thoroughly understood this section, then you can proceed to Section 4.